the age of 16 with transparent only. And then that went on for years and years and years and years. And it was just like college just drilled it in, and professional artists drilled it in. And when I did competition, it was, way back then, you know, it's only transparent, that's it, that's all we'll accept. And so that's where I was. And so it got to the point of the painting that you see on the front. It's called It's Tough Being Transparent. And I named it that because it began to be transparent, and this is when the switch came. Everything was transparent. It was pigments that were just glowing and gorgeous, and it was a fight because you didn't want them to get muddy, that, you know, you won't have a very good painting if it's muddy. So, and you have these gorgeous glazes. And so when I did this one, and it was a lot of cut glass, I used masking fluid. And it took a really long time to do it. So when I finally got around to taking off the masking fluid, it wouldn't come off. It would not come off for anything. So that's when one of my wonderful students, and she's sitting in the back and she's got a bright yellow shirt on, introduced me to, and I love students, they're always introducing us to new things, bleed-proof white. And it's opaque as all get out. It was like, should I do it? And Jeannie was doing the most gorgeous stuff. Jeannie does a lot of transparent stuff, and she uses a teeny bit of opaque with hers. So on those little places where I needed the white of the paper, I had to resort to opaque white. And also with that, I like to put cerulean blue or any other cobalt, and they're just so fantastic the way they work together. Hopefully, I just didn't think that you could see that. So Connie's going to pass this around. On the back, you'll see transparent, similar colors, but these, on the other side, they're opaque granulating. You'll see the difference of what they do. So when I was breaking loose, I titled this Freedom, Watercolor Freedom. When I really broke loose and began to get freer in painting, I went from transparents. If you look at them closely, and Connie's going to pass these out too. This is Robin. Remember Robin, our president before? That's her at a plein air paint out. Those are transparents, all transparents. No, if there's any white, there's white of the paper. And the sky in this and the shadow on the Marblehead Lighthouse are made with opaque granulating. There's some, the white that I talked about on that one, and a lot of white on this one. Is that the bleed-proof? The bleed-proof white, right. And you know what, Rosie, I think it's sort of just a teeny bit acrylic, not totally, but because if you leave the lid off, it's done, it's toast. You have to really keep that, you know, it doesn't reconstitute. So, like I said a minute ago, when I was breaking loose and trying to work this out, and it's still a struggle for me. I still have to, oh, no, I don't have to just use transparent. I can go on and I can use other things. Went to a workshop with Stephen Quiller, and I recommend this book highly. He breaks down all the different colors. You see I've got it tabbed. I just used it for years while I was studying and trying to really get a handle on this. He breaks down the transparents, the opaques, and how they work together and how they, you know, don't get mud but make beautiful grays. But anyway, in this, it'll tell you whether each pigment is transparent or opaque. Another way to find out, if not having that book, is just to go to Dick Blick and type in the color that you want. And when that color, when you choose that one individual color, you'll get a choice at the bottom below the color, and it'll say pigment information. Click on that tab, and it'll tell you right there whether it's transparent or opaque. You'll know. So right now, on the beginning of this flower, I have transparent here, and I've used the opaques on this. And so typically with transparents, like I said, with the, when I use the plastic sheets, we'll do glazes. Quiller's not paying me to do this, but I really love his products. I love his brushes. Use big brushes. If you've got a big painting, use a big brush. He has one even bigger than this. But this is so nice because it comes to such a chisel edge, tiny little details you can get with that.
And what's the name of that brush?
This is a Quiller flat, and this is a half inch, oh, but 1.5, and this one is the 3-inch. And I think they have a 4-inch. So when I bend over that, can you still see the painting? You see it? Okay.
Is your paper rough or smooth?
You know what? This is 300-pound arches, and it's not rough. It's just cold pressed, but it feels a little bit rougher than I'm used to.
I'm impressed with your clean palette.
This is one I don't use very much. That's Jeannie. She knows what palettes are dirty, aren't they? Yeah.
What color is it?
Okay, it's quinacridone rose. A lot of my colors are Daniel Smith. That one probably is.
Have you ever tried the core?
I don't do it as well as Connie does, that's for sure. I bet you've done it, haven't you, Rosie?
The core?
Yeah. So I always like to dry very, very well between transparent layers. That's not dry. So what I'm going to do is work with some opaques for a few minutes. I'll let that dry, maybe hit it again with the hair dryer in a second. And I don't know if you're all familiar with Cheap Joe's Piggyback palette. He has like a big rectangular palette, and it's got an indentation for this rectangle, and you can slip these little ones into it. It's called a piggyback. I have the hardest time always, on his site looking for this, finding it, but it's really handy because if you just want some extra colors, those ones that I used to think were bad, no, you don't use those are in there. These are my bad paints, my rebellious paints. So those are all the opaques, and I laminated, a piece of watercolor paper with the colors on it. So like I said, I like cobalt green.
I think I like it now too.
Isn't that pretty?
Looking at it, it's a beautiful green.
It is, but at this moment, it's not really a natural color for if you were doing, a bicycle or something, that'd be great. But it's a leaf, so I want it to be more natural. So I got a little Naples yellow here. And that just doesn't seem to be enough. So I think I'll just put a little bit of orange in that. Dull that down just a little bit. And all the time I'm doing this, everybody, I hope you've seen that, that sheet with the two granulating colors. Every time I'm doing it, I'm watching it. I don't think you can see it from here, but they're just, pushing each other around, and they're just all these little bumpy things. I love lilac too. It's just really fun to put all different kind of colors in there. Okay, and then there's the cobalt turquoise. It adds a little bit more of a blue tint to it, to the leaf. And it's nice for darkening. And that happens to be opposite orange, turquoise. That's another thing Quiller taught me. And I use a palette that's similar to Quiller's, where you've got your 12 basic colors. These are transparent in the center, so that I know instantaneously. I don't even have to know about it. I just look across the board and I've got an opposite. I can go gray, or I can tone down my green, make it not so bright. I want that really a lot darker. I can go to one of my transparents, phthalo green. Go to the opposite, which is my Quinn rose, and get much, much darker. Then if it's too dark, it's not green enough, I'll go back to my cobalt green, and it's, it's really thick. You just keep playing with it. And I think that's the freedom component of why I'm here tonight. It's just to talk about what we can do. And now it's really starting to granulate because I introduced some transparents to it. So they're really fighting each other. They're pushing each other around on there. And I'm just kind of watching it, watch the sheen on it before I use credit card. Best use the credit cards, right? Cut them off, don't use them for real.
Save money now.
Yeah. Another one of my transparents is in Danthrone. That's on that circle there.
Where'd you get those cups? Those are really nice.
There's a link to this on my website under Watercolor supplies. Just grab that and it's right there. It's Amazon. I like it because it's white. I have a large porcelain palette that I use. I don't really like the lid. That's why it looks so clean, because I don't like it. So the idea of doing glazes in watercolor, and also in oils actually, is to have it thin enough that you can see the color on top and that you can look through that color on top and see the color underneath. That's not too late for that. It might be. There it goes. That's another no-no. I wouldn't have done that with transparency. No way, you know, this is all you do. That's it. So I'm going to go with some phthalo green, Quin Rose, so I can deepen my green. It almost makes it black. And I like color, and I guess it's from having done only transparents for years. I like to see color within color within color within color. I mean, I just like to draw the viewer in, and the viewer, you know, from far away, they go, oh, I want to see that. And they go up and they stay there because there's all those things going on. So not only did I mix the red with the green, but I'm also going to put pops of the red in there just for fun. It'll darken it, and it'll just give it some pretty color. There's two sides to this, and typically it would be cool and warm colors, but I'm trying to keep my opaque rinsing over here and my transparent rinsing over here. I don't think I did. I'm trying though. You know, artists, we just, you know, we get busy creating and we forget, and that's really a good thing. Okay, this is just a teeny bit of new gamboge. I don't want very much. Want it very thinned down. Again, like those sheets of plastic, I want to be able to lay that over. And those sheets of plastic were red, yellow, and blue. Because there is a bit of yellow in this. And I don't want it to overpower it. I just want it to be like that delicate flower. I want it to be nice and thin.
What did you add to the cover to thin it? A squirt bottle? They're just water?
Water.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't say.
I thought it was some secret ingredient.
It is water.
Clean water.
Okay.
It is distilled water though. I do prefer to use distilled water when I'm doing the transparents especially. Because it keeps them really nice and fresh. And this is not the bright white paper. This is regular Arches. But with my transparent paintings, I really, really do like their new bright white. So that's just a touch of yellow, not much at all. That is not completely dry, and I don't care. I do have, even though I have transparents in the center, and I have a few transparents out here, I also have quite a few on the outlying edges of the granulated colors. So they're not all in that little box right there. So if I want a little bit of texture here, like you saw on that, I'm using the cobalt violet. So get the best of both worlds going on in the very same painting, not just petals and leaves, but petals also. Everything's happening. It just adds another dimension. And another color, obviously. Another nice thing about the opaques is, unlike my 12 staining colors in the center that are staining. Some of them are so staining, it's hard to get them up. But with these, if I use a scrub brush, I can almost instantaneously go right back to the white as paper, color's gone. So you can push it around, manipulate it. I've also done a lot of sculpting. I studied to be an art teacher, so we did it all. We did clay, we did everything. So this push and pull thing, I relate to it in my head. You know, it's like push that clay, pull that clay. I'm pushing and pulling color on and off of that paper. But you can't do that with transparency. You're stuck. Once it's there, it's there. So one of the things that I like to do, if you think about the rule of thirds, focal point, where you want your eye to zero in, I always like to think about cad orange and cad red light. And what better way for me personally to do that is with the opaques. And you can just, I could have, I didn't, I painted around those extensions in the center, but I could have painted it all pink and blue and yellow. And when it was dry, just go right over it. As long as it's dry, go right over it with that nice bright opaque color. I think you use casein, don't you, Leonard?
Pardon?
Don't you use casein?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
I use all.
And that casein is opaque, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot like temper color.
Right.
That's- Everybody says what's casein, that's why I tell them use temper colors as a kid. Glorified temper colors.
I don't know. It is glorified because it's really pretty.
It has a really, has a velvety.
Velvety, that's the word.
Texture.
That's what distinguishes it from tempera or
Yeah,
you know,
oh, yeah.
gouache. It's just, it's pretty.
Yeah.
It has a really nice finish on it,
Yeah.
doesn't it? Yeah.
One of the reasons that you use it quite a bit for reproduction too is because it dries perfectly flat.
Uh-huh.
They don't have a sheen on it.
Right.
So it's easy
Right.
to reproduce.
Velvety. Velvety is right.
Reproduce an artwork.
Donna, do you usually work like you are right now for the demo, like one part at a time and develop? Or do you ever?
If I'm doing a flower and it's got petals, I normally, yes, the answer is pretty much yes. If I'm doing something detailed like this, but if I'm doing something loose, no, it's everywhere. So if I'm doing something detailed like this, yeah. But a flower, normally I'll do a petal, leave a space, do a petal, leave a space, do a petal. That way I can get back to it faster because it has more time to dry, and that way I'm not using the hairdryer that much. So this is cad yellow light. This one works better. It will cover even more if I mix it with the bleed-proof white, but it will cover, but not as well as the orange and the red will.
I have a favorite transparent yellow in Daniel Smith.
Do I have a favorite transparent yellow? That was always kind of tricky because Hansa yellow is not as permanent or as staining as bismuth yellow. Bismuth yellow is the yellow that I have on here for transparent. It is transparent, it is permanent, it is staining, but at the same time, it's a tad bit opaque. It feels like it's got a little white in it, but when you look at the tube, it's not there. There's nothing to indicate that there's white in it, but it just offers just a little bit more opaqueness than an actual CAD yellow does. I mean, the opposite. This one has your more opaque. That one just not that much. It's pretty much. So I'd say bismuth. I've tried Hansa. It works, but I know it's not as permanent, not as staining. So I stick with the bismuth.
Have you found any transparent colors that would replace the cadmiums, still get that brilliance without having the cadmium in them?
You know, I've never put them side by side, but just looking at just those two that we just talked about, the CAD yellow and the bismuth yellow, they look identical.
I was watching a Cheap Joe 2-minute
Yeah.
thing, recently, and they were talking about trying to, reduce the amount of cadmium.
Oh, yeah, a lot of.
But mostly they were talking about oil paints.
Well, I don't know. I think in all of the paints, they're starting to come out with, I think I just saw some. There's the bismuth. Yeah. They're more expensive though, aren't they?
Of course. What is it?
And that had a little bit of green in it because it's right next to my green. So, yeah, that's a little brighter. Billy's got a good point there, doesn't she? Yep, definitely brighter.
Sorry, I couldn't get it to turn on.
That's okay. Another nice thing with our transparents, even though we have the beginning of a petal there and we have the colors, it might not be as strong as we want it. So we can put another layer over that and that dark is still there. I'm putting that on pretty dark too. I think that's one of the things I love about transparents. You can just keep going and going and going. I've got to stay away from that though. So with the opaques, I can erase back. Well, with transparents, if I want to lighten something, I've got to get in there immediately. Right away. And lighten that up. Wherever that I, might want a lighter shade. And honestly, that's it. But opaques and transparents. Yeah.
How do you determine what you want to paint, transparent or opaque? Could you reverse that and paint those petals, the flowers, opaque?
I could, but and maybe it's the reason I chose to do a flower. Petals really work well with transparents because they look so beautiful because the light shines right through that petal and you literally can see all those colors. So I would say flower petals for sure. I think I passed around a painting with a water scene. I like to use transparents with water unless I've got some white caps there. Then I like to pull out some of this. And sometimes I get, I'm really an oil painter, really in my heart. So this is thick and heavy and oh gosh, it's like, I get in there and I go, ugh, I get too much on there. So I really have to be careful.
Is that Doc Martens?
It is, Dr. Martin, yes.
Bleed proof?
Bleed proof white.
See, calligraphers use that all the time.
Yep, maybe that's where that's from.
You can dilute that.
I bet that's what it's for.
You can't add water to that once if it's too thick.
Well, in the bottle, yeah, but like I said, if I leave the lid off, it will not reconstitute. It'll dry out within like 24 hours. It's
But I've had mine like get thick somewhat with the lid on
yeah.
and add water and
Yes, as long, yeah. And so I'd really like to know what's really in that. It just kind of feels like there's a little bit of acrylic or something. I don't know.
Well, that's nice to know though that you use that in
Jeannie. Oh, Jeannie, share your paintings. Yeah. Did you bring the marbles? She's working on a marble painting today, and like I said, she was my student a long time ago, and now student, like learning basics, and now she's like way above me. Wait till you see, you will not believe this. Yeah. No. If you want to.
I don't know. I was thinking maybe I should try that. Take my shoes off and go up.
Yeah, it works for
Make
you.
you a better painter.
What if we lay it? If she laid it right here, would it show up there?
Yeah, just watch all the cords up here. 'Cause
Oh yeah, there's a cord right behind you, Gina.
Okay, I
Yeah.
am not finished with this yet.
Come on
Just
over,
ready to
Gina.
lay it.
Just lay it right there, and you can see it.
Like this?
Yeah.
A little bit of information. I have a friend who is now in a nursing home with dementia. So I and another lady are in the process of cleaning out her house. So I started out looking for certain things, you know, like the little gym that would help pay for her nursing home care, you know, jewelry and stuff like that. We have gone through everything. In the process, I end up with finding gems. I have found her family never threw anything away. They kept, her grandfather was a blacksmith. So what I've done, I've never set up props for a still life before. And I thought this is the perfect time to start it. So I did it mostly in the evening when it was darker, so all of my paintings that I've done, the last 4 paintings that all have black, dark backgrounds. But I like the contrast. So when I started painting the marbles, I laid them out on a wooden desk. I didn't like what it looked like, so I tried different surfaces. I tried a mirror. So finally I looked at, while I was in my kitchen, I have a stove that has a black cooktop. And you know, it's really shiny, so I thought, oh, maybe I'll try that. That's what you see with the ring. Like I said, this isn't finished, so I got a couple more marbles to do, and I need to do a little bit more on the front of it down in here. But
Step up just a little bit, so
okay, I proceeded to lay my marbles out on my stove. Now it's a new stove, about 6 years ago, but it was level, but sometime along the way it settled to the back. So I put my marbles up there, they rolled to the back.
lost her marble.
So I kept bringing them back up. Not all of them did, about half of them. So I kept bringing them back. It was very frustrating, so I thought, what am I going to do? So I just got a roll of double-sided tape, and I cut these little squares out and stuck them underneath the bottom, and I'm rearranging them, and I'd step back and look through the eye of my camera and thought, yeah. So anyway, this is what I came up with. So when I decided to paint it finally, and I told Donna I was going to do it, and she warned me, she said, now remember, the marbles, they're all transparent. You need to think transparent. And every time I sat down to paint that thing, all I heard was you saying, transparent. So, except for the bag, of course. But I did use transparent. I stuck with it, and they're turning out pretty good. So I'm getting excited about this one. Kathy, that is in our workshop, because to me, naming a painting is one of the hardest things to do. Sometimes it's harder than doing the actual painting. She came up with, she says, well, why don't you, since it's an old red leather bag, and she said, just call it the old bag and her marbles. Perfect. So I get a lot of help from Donna and Kathy and anyone else that shows up in the class. We have a lot of fun. I've learned a lot. I've only been painting for 5 years. I used to do some acrylics 35 years ago, but then I got married and had children and went to work, and you know how that goes. So I didn't have time for painting. So 35 years ago, before I decided to quit painting, I bought a set of watercolor paints. Of course, they don't make that brand anymore, but it was a good brand. And I think I bought it at McAllister's in Dayton when it was there. And I brought it home and I never opened it. It was brand new. So then when I retired, I decided I'm going to take watercolor classes because I always wanted to do it. I got the paints. I still have brushes from doing acrylics. So I started taking classes up at the Hayner Center and been there for 5 years, and I just love it. So, but this is what I'm working on right now. But I have some